Our first topic, as we gave you in our tease in our opening package, is a hashtag that is trending around the country. It is called the 2020 View is 2020. And it's a perfect synopsis of our bird's eye view, our perfect clarity of our 2020 view is now turning our attention to 2020. Before we open our conversation of a kind of a recap of what we've watched this week, let's watch this video as you watch Beto O'Rourke in his concession speech, and we talk about the top 10 things that we saw at It's Happening Out in the midterm election on Tuesday. Watch this, it's quite interesting.
We offer our experience, and our perspective, and our courage, and our confidence on the issues that we know best as one half of the largest binational community anywhere in the Americas, joined with Ciudad Juarez to form something powerful, magical, and nothing to be afraid of or walled off or to apologize for. I want to make sure that this proud community offers all it has to give to this country and to our future and to ensuring that our greatest days are still ahead, and that the policy that we craft and the laws that we write and the way in which we treat each other comes not out of fear, but comes out of confidence and strength and this kind heart that I've always known El Paso to have. I want to thank this amazing campaign of people, not a dime from a single pack, all people, all the time, in every single part of Texas. All of you showing the country how you do this. I'm so fucking proud of you guys. Damning the differences and deciding that what unites us is far stronger than the color of our skin, how many generations we can count ourselves an American, or whether we just got here yesterday, who we love, who we pray to, whether we pray at all, who we voted for last time. None of that small stuff matters now. It is the greatness to which we aspire and the work that we're willing to put into it to achieve it, by which we will be known going forward. And this campaign holds a very special place in the history of this country every day going forward. And you have made that possible. I am forever changed in the most profoundly positive way. I am forever grateful to every single one of you for making this possible. I believe in you, I believe in Texas, I believe in this country.
Absolutely a beautiful concession speech, and it reminded me of the Navy Pier in 2008. A very young Senator Barack Obama coming to power. It was a very similar moment. So we've watched the election and the midterms are complete. What does everybody think about what happened on Tuesday?
I mean, I hate to be the buzzkill again, but I mean, I feel like my outlook on it is maybe not quite as positive as O'Rourke's was in that speech. You know, I feel like this society is kind of, I hate to say it, but working exactly as it was always intended, which is not necessarily a good thing. You know, a lot of the results of this election, both in Florida and nationwide, still reflects, you know, a lot of racism, a lot of just antiquated ideas that are still affecting us today, that are still harming people today. And it's just been hard. It's been a rough week. It's been heartbreaking. And I'm shaking a little even talking about it, because it's been exhausting to see just how far we haven't come.
I couldn't help but notice all week as we were preparing for the show, we even talked about maybe even doing an election edition. After Halloween, it was just too much for us to do it. We'll do it in the future. but I can't help but notice that I can't remember an election that was as personal for so many people that I looked at, that they had either great joy or great disappointment, and not really anything in the middle. And I think that's the point you're making.
Yeah.
Other thoughts about what we
I feel so naive for having thought that there would be so much that so much of what has happened in the last 2 years, the atrocity that happened 2 years ago and 3 years ago, that it would be corrected somehow now. I feel as though I am somehow a fool for thinking something would be different right now than it was before. I was completely disheartened on Tuesday night. I don't want to believe in anything that happens anymore. And I know that there is change that can happen, that we can progress as a society, that we can be affected by what happens, but that's not what I've experienced in my lifetime, at least not as of yet, and I really hope that that does happen sometime in the future. I understand completely, Aaron.
I hear the sorrow in your voice of that observation, but we start with Beto O'Rourke's concession speech, where he says he only lost by 150,000 votes out of 8 million in Texas. I think what was so beautiful about his speech is he said, even in defeat, we are going to march on positively from this. How does O'Rourke's words affect you?
That's completely correct. It's just not what I can feel. It's not what I can muster within myself. It took everyone yesterday to try to tell me all of what I would consider positive things that happened from yesterday, and refocusing and highlighting all of what I would consider to be positive changes for me to even be able to get a smile on my face with what happened on Tuesday. But I also live in Florida, and it's not just that our nation had a lot of change that happened within it. I live in Florida where it seems to have gotten even worse, where it's reversed in time. And that's, to be fair, a positive change happened out of it. I am now completely convinced that this is where I need to be, that this is the place for me to have a voice, for me to have a say, for me to experience what I can experience and impact other people, which is terrible and frightening, because now I feel even more of a spotlight on me to make sure that I can impact other people. But I am...
Meaning Florida being a principal battleground? Is that what you're saying?
Florida being a principal battleground, Florida really, being so split as it's theorized.
It's really interesting. In the video package that you just watched, we talked about losing our stars representing the Democratic Party. Nelson's gone, Gillum's gone, Abrams in Georgia is gone, O'Rourke in Texas is gone. But we also point out in that video package lots of great things happened. More than 400 gay candidates ran on Tuesday, and we had some big wins. We have the first Native American congressman coming. We have the first Muslim congressman coming. We have more than 100 women breaking the glass ceiling of Congress coming. And we had 4 governors that were LGBTQ plus that ran, including Texas, who came so close. 3.5 million Texans voted for a gay Texas governor. He didn't cross the finish line, but my goodness, that was so amazing. And history is made on Tuesday in the first openly gay governor in American history in Colorado. Yes. So we have a lot to be excited about.
And before we get into the specifics, I'm actually really curious, Joe, how do you feel coming off of Tuesday? Because your views vary more so than a lot of others on staff.
Well, I'll start with Beto O'Rourke's speech, because I very much like the speech. The thing that struck me from the speech was, at least from my perspective, he was trying to get us to move from our tribalism to unity and collaboration, that it requires us, if we are going to work as a people group, as a community, as a nation, as Texas and the rest of the country, we have to not abandon our own tribes, but we have to abandon a level of tribalism and find ways to work together and collaborate if we're to make the country successful. And that's the biggest thing. Is I felt like he was saying, let's move away from some of the hysteria, right? And work more on talking about problems, not talking about people, right? And find solutions to problems.
Joe, I'm curious, and we're going to talk about our bet in a little bit, but not yet. But I'm curious, so you're in Washington,
Yep.
And the Republican National Committee. Tell us your experience on Tuesday, because it's completely different than everyone else here at the table. Tell us about your experience.
Even though you lost the House, let's not forget that.
What was it like?
It actually was. It was a positive experience. I will say there were a lot of folks that were there that anticipated losing the House. It was hard-fought races. There was a lot of seats that were up for grabs where candidates chose not to go for re-election, and there weren't necessarily candidates to come up and or compete at a reasonable level. So
Was the mood disappointed? Were they enthusiastic? What
the mood was
reaction?
still very enthusiastic. The thing is that when you have a divided government with the president and the Senate and the Congress, that's the recipe, honestly, to get the most collaborative work done, and it can be done.
I tell you, I watched again today the president's news conference yesterday at 11:30, and he went berserk on racism and a number of things he went berserk on. But he did bring me to a stop on one observation that he made that I thought was really incredible. He said, and of course he's spinning, but he spun the idea that having a Democratic House meant that now the Democrats would step up and say, here are ideas that we want to push through, like infrastructure. And now I have an ally in the Democrats, and we must negotiate to a conclusion. And actually, we will get more done in the next 2 years with the Democratic House. Setting aside his spin, that made complete sense to me.
But history shows, especially around Newt Gingrich and the Clinton administration, that the most productive time during Clinton's reign or presidency was when they were divided House, when the Senate and the House were divided, and they were forced to come together and do some very good things.
Yeah, that's why we have checks and balances. That's why it's called that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And you didn't see our video package, but the number one thing from the Tuesday night is that we continue to have divided government. It was divided before, but now it's absolutely divided. Howard, any thoughts about Tuesday?
Well, first of all, to what Joe said, Clinton's presidency and his administration is certainly different from Trump's. So we'll have to see if the same magic can be replicated, because Trump ain't no Clinton.
Okay.
The other thing is that I wasn't actually very disappointed with Tuesday's results, and part of the reason why is because I actually expected the results to be as they were. I was disappointed in Florida because I do say, and I say what I say, that Florida's election results still reflect racist and bigoted views. And, I was very hopeful that Andrew Gillum would win, but I wasn't surprised that he didn't, and I didn't really expect him to. Florida is still, Florida always fucks it up. However, I also looked at the national race. So on the state level, we didn't do very well. But nationally, we won the House. And that's a big deal. And we need to celebrate that, because now there is checks and balance. Now there is oversight. And, now there is going to be some type of oversight when it comes to the president and when it comes to the Senate as well.
Yeah.
So I am happy about that. And I am going to take my joys and count my blessings where they come.
Yeah, Power, it was actually your post about exactly that kind of got me to pick my shoulders up off the floor this week after everything that went down, because I really was feeling kind of, like you said, not exactly surprised, but still disappointed.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I read your post, I was like, all right, girl, you're right. At least we got something. And Amendment 4 passed. So, voting restoration for felons in Florida.
By the way, we include that in the video package. Amendment 4 in Florida restored voting rights to 1.5 million ex-felons in Florida. So in the next election, they are allowed to vote.
And they might be the 1% that flips us right to where we need to go.
I'm not going to call him out, but I'm not going to call him out, but I have a very special friend here tonight in the audience who this applies to, and I'm very, very happy that he will be able to vote in the next election, even though he is a criminal junkie. Just kidding.
Right.
Just kidding.
I'm curious. One last thing that I want to talk about on the election and the midterms. First off, if you haven't watched the president's press conference, he took personal credit for Florida. He took personal credit for the defeat of Nelson and personal credit for the defeat of Gillum. And in Georgia, took personal credit specifically calling President Obama and Oprah Winfrey out that he did a better job to have the Republican candidate win in Georgia, which I thought was incredible. President Trump has declared Florida as his home state. And so that's interesting.
Well, you know what else is interesting? You know what else is interesting is that while he can take a victory lap for all the races that were won, I notice he's not taking a walk of shame for the House.
Yeah.
He's very I'll take credit for this, but that's on you. No, bitch, you got to take credit for all of it.
We don't watch that very much.
I think he recognized and acknowledged that with what time he could be out stumping for candidates, those that he could reach were the Senate candidates, and there were so many congressional candidates that were up that there's no way he, as the president, with everything that's going on, could hit all of those regions. And he understood that, and understood that it was likely we would lose the House.
One last point that I think is interesting. With all the racism comments and what happened in Florida, is anyone still surprised that perhaps the LGBT plus community, Q plus community, is not really the target of the politics in America? That it is really other minorities?
Yeah, because gay people are racist too.
Well, bigotry and racism walk hand in hand. You know, first of all, we have this governor-elect, Ron DeSantis, all right, who
Nightmare.
Okay, so first of all, not only, along with the fact that he associates with right-wing extremists and racists, and the racists love him to death. They put out robocalls, against Gillum. But forget about the people of color for a second. As far as the LGBT community, do you guys know that, he stumped and did a event with a guy by the name of, let me get this right here, Hanny. A guy by the name of Raymond Jackson, who I never heard of before. Raymond Jackson is an anti-LGBT activist who has spent years railing against the gay community. And he actually claimed that gay leaders were using the Pulse massacre as a way to spread our, and I quote, radical homosexual agenda.
I remember that.
But DeSantis thought that it was cute and it was choice to be associating with him and in fact stumping with him at a rally. So my thing is, I don't want a leader or a governor to represent me in government who finds it okay to hang around and associate with people like this. It's reflective of him and his views.
So let me ask you, just to counterbalance that, how do you feel about Louis Farrakhan and Barack Obama and the others who keep company and bring Louis Farrakhan around? He has no love lost for the LGBT community at all. Okay, he's been anti-Jewish. He is one of the most racist individuals I've ever met. But so many in the Democrat community bring Louis Farrakhan along, and nobody says anything.
Well, when has Obama asked Louis Farrakhan to share a stage with him in some type of rally or something? Him knowing
he actually has.
Huh?
He actually has.
When? When?
Well, we'll go look it up. But I've seen him.
Now I don't. Let me tell you,
okay.
Since you asked me a question about Louis Farrakhan, right is right and wrong is wrong. So I don't give a damn if it's Louis Farrakhan or Kunta Kinte. If you saying racist or bigoted shit, I'm to call you out. Louis Farrakhan, for all that he's done for black people, he's still wrong as fuck when he talks the way that he talks. And I'm going to say,
and I agree. I agree.
Yeah,
I
I'm going to
agree.
say. So if Obama, and one thing about me is I can, and I have disagreed with things that Obama has done. I don't care who it is. Right is right and wrong is wrong. So if Obama did that, I would say, Obama, you were wrong. Just like I would hope that you could say the same about DeSantis.
I agree with you.
Okay.
I agree with you.
Okay.
If he brought somebody on stage that had those views, then I would agree with you on that.
Okay, well, that's a positive, I'm going to interrupt there. That's
fine.
a positive note. We're, of course, it's going to be, the title of this segment is The View is 2020 for 2020. And of course, this is going to be a centric issue for us, and we'll continue to do it.